As children interact with each other when they play, they develop the cognitive skills that are essential to literacy. So this is where we begin to see the strong connections between literacy and play. It's through the cognitive experiences they have and the social interactions that take place. You may listen to children as they play, and they often step in and out of roles so that they are switching roles from playing to talking about play to discussing who's going to be what, but to sharing roles, to deciding locations. So it's these verbal exchanges, dialogues, and negotiations that are central to literacy and that give the children literate and creative ways of thinking. In this script, based on a real-life play episode, we see that it is through play that children learn about the language world, the social world around them, and they build the interpersonal skills. They practice and become strong language users as well. Play provides the settings, the opportunities to learn about oral language and context in an authentic and real way that is meaningful to them. So what we hear are the scripts from everyday life that children practice in their play. And in this example, it's the script of going to a doctor. But in doing so, what children gain from this is they're building richer vocabulary. They're using wider expressions than they would use in a different context. They are trying out the rules of conversation. They're learning the social dance of listening and speaking and responding. And they are trying out different patterns of speech. They are changing their tone of voice. So we hear this all happening as they play. The other thing that play does is it sets the stage for vocabulary building, grammatical knowledge, and narrative skills. In this imaginative play scenario, the child is playing with a magnetic toy set, and it bases the play on a familiar book, Are You My Mother? Here, the book-related play episode shows us that children in imaginative play use fantasy talk. And the ability to use narrative skills is a very, very important one as they develop their emergent literacy. They grow to understand the concept of a story. They use play as a form of storytelling where they incorporate and build on elements of character, setting, plot, theme. They're experimenting with all of this as they play, as they construct their narrative scenarios. Their play builds upon a narrative framework. So already they're prepared for the literature they're going to encounter and for the stories that they themselves will soon write. This is all significant because it enhances literacy learning, it leads to reading success, and later on, it helps them with their reading and writing achievements. What are some of the play-based experiences? These are what are highlighted in the book, but I'd like to focus particularly on having children create text for play because it supports us in this short journey that we're going to take this morning to them becoming writers. Children are so inventive in their play, whether they are architects or gypsies, pirates, or perhaps they're playing the role of a doctor. Regardless of the role that they step into, children take hold of the pen when the resources are available to them. They go to those play centers and the other areas where they can grab hold of tools and materials, and they put them to use. And they create some amazing forms and texts. They experiment with different purposes. They discover the purposes themselves for writing, and we'll see some examples now. So you have children creating grocery lists as part of their play, or perhaps they're problem solving as they're trying to design and build a structure, but they come up with a floor plan first. Or perhaps the children are coming up with their own business cards and pamphlets as they play. So what they're doing here is they're experimenting with the forms of writing even before they're being taught what those genres and formats are. We have here an invoice and a check that was part of an imaginative play episode as well, and a toy chart. So they're not just using it to support the play, but they're using it to organize themselves. So they come up with graphs and charts and visual organizers of all kinds that support them through their play episodes. And what I love most is when you hear them discovering their own voice and they start to use drama techniques early on. I'm going to share with you next a writing and role strategy that 2 children engaged in when they were playing an imaginative play dialogue. It was based on a complex scenario where fish were being depleted from the ocean, and they had to come up with a solution as to why is this happening. Let's do an investigation and let's discover what's the source of this and how can we problem solve our way through it. So one child elicits the help of the other by writing this letter. Dear Ashley, I have a very bad problem I need to solve. My magic fish got caught in one of those terrible nets. After I find it, I need to find the hidden treasure. I would like to find it with you. From Gypsy. So the voices of them becoming writers starts here. Apart from play, there's other oral language experiences that we can give children that help them build literacy naturally. Like play, children learn oral language within the course of everyday living, so it's something authentic for them. So giving them experiences in oral language practice are going to be key. They learn this through the daily conversations that take place at home, in the community, through play, through the social interactions they have with others, through the learning that takes place and the dialogues that take place in the classroom. Being surrounded by language and having an opportunity to practice not only gives them the models, but it gives them the opportunity to share and grow in literacy and develop a stronghold of language, which becomes the cornerstone to formal learning and language growth. Building vocabulary, grammatical knowledge, and narrative and storytelling skills can move children into formal literacy tasks so that the oral language experiences they have in early childhood become the building blocks that will prepare them for reading, writing, and other formal ways of using oral language, as in oral presentations and so forth. So the process, it's important that we understand that the process of language learning is interconnected. I think so much emphasis has been placed upon reading and writing experiences in past years that now we need to see that all of these language systems work together. So the reading, the writing, the listening, and speaking develop cohesively. And that as children talk, they're also experimenting with reading and writing, and that all of these skills prepare them for becoming readers and writers. It's through the oral language practices where they talk about books, or when they share personal narratives, or when they respond to fictional stories, or create their own tales, that they use decontextualized language, narrative discourse, complex sentence structures, the book language from the storybooks that they've heard, and the richer vocabulary that will prepare them for the formal literacy tasks. Being familiar with book language is what leads them towards enjoyable and successful reading. Oral language can also support them in their writing development. So if you listen to children, especially young children, as they write, then they talk to themselves. They use play as a way, talk as a way to guide them, as a placeholder in their writing, and as a tool to plan what it is they want to put on the page. So while reading and writing experiences have been the predominant focus, I think we need to put a priority now on the oral language practices that can also build literacy. Of these oral language practices, of which they are outlined in the book, I'm going to focus in our time remaining on the 3 remaining ones, because they support us in the journey of moving from play to being a writer. Opening a child's ear to language begins with the music, storytelling, read-alouds, and language events of early childhood. From a young age, children are already exposed to those wonderful texts of childhood, the songs, the verses, the rhymes, and this journey starts many times on the laps of many loving family members as they bounce along and play the clapping games. They echo these, and it's these experiences that will lead them to having a strong command of language. It's the oral traditions that we can draw upon and the cultural resources that we can draw upon. So we're embracing this rich amount of literature that is also part of their cultural life, so that the verses and the texts and the songs that they know from their early years can become texts for the classroom use as well. When children play with the structures and the words the sounds of this language, they're building the stronghold of language that they need to grow in literacy. To become literate and be able to read, children need to gain a deeper understanding of language, an understanding that grows from an awareness of sounds and other language features. And it's this language awareness that develops through the repetition, through the chanting, through the rhyming. Children grow in their innovation towards language, and they become able to use it and experience using it by using texts like songs, poems, rhymes, and verses. They gain linguistic knowledge and language competence and proficiency. So all of these experiences are very important to them forming oral language, reading, and writing skills. While there are many benefits to doing wordplay with young people, I'll focus in on just a couple of them, and those being that here they hear the language patterns by ear first, even before they encounter them on the page, so that they are well experienced in knowing it orally. They take these oral experiences then, and they're able to make the sound-print connections or the language-print connections that can guide them towards their reading. We're going to do a couple of activities in a moment together where you can see that the language games that they play give them the emergent literacy reading strategies and skills they will need when they encounter the text themselves. They gain a deeper understanding of the language and the print so that they can become the writers. What I love about using all of these texts in childhood, the first texts of childhood, this folk literature, is that it's already familiar to them. They'll come to school and they'll name off a jingle or a slogan that they've heard on a radio ad or in a television commercial. And these are the texts that are part of the curriculum of childhood even before they enter the classroom. They know them by heart. Encountering these texts first by ear will help them to make it easier when they meet these words on the page, so making those print connections. There are many early childhood games and activities that we can engage children in, but I'm going to focus particularly on the rhyming activities and the sound games this morning, and we're going to play a sound game together in a moment. The fun and excitement of listening and repeating rhymes moves children towards repeating them, echoing. So they're adding the verses and they're adding the lyrics of their own. Whether they do so with songs like Down by the Bay and they add their own verse, or whether they innovate on them and they come up with some of their own. The text adaptations can be based on traditional favorites so that we hear in this echo rhyme the remnants of another rhyme that they've heard. There were 5 little chickens sitting on a barn. One fell off and broke his arm. There were 4 little monkeys sitting in a tree. One fell off and broke his knee. One little bear cub jumping on the clothes. She fell off and bumped her nose. The big fat spider went up a big oak tree. He slipped on some sticks and landed next to me. Children are writers. Even before the pencil meets the page, they're already composing, they're constructing. All of the processes that go into writing a text, they're doing it orally when they play with language through wordplay events like this. So adding verses to songs or making up riddles and jokes and expanding on the popular rhymes they know from their own culture or traditional favorites that they've grown up with. Provide the models, provide the genres and the formats that later become the ones they write.